Today, we're going to untangle the fraught history between the Soviet state and the Orthodox Church.
So, did he? Well, a lot of people think so, but the reality is way more complex.
First up, you have to understand the core ideological clash. These two were never going to get along.
Marx famously called religion the opium of the people, something that just numbed real-world pain.
Engels argued we basically invented gods just to explain things we couldn't control.
And Lenin, he was even more direct. Fighting religion was a core Marxist duty, period.
This all comes from historical materialism, the belief that reality is purely physical, not divine.
So you can see there was absolutely zero philosophical middle ground between these two.
So what fuels the myth then? Well, it all goes back to a pivotal meeting in 1943.
Right in the middle of the war, Stalin totally reverses years of harsh repression.
But why? It was a strategic move, pure and simple, to boost morale for the war.
But here is where a lot of arguments get it wrong. You have to separate two key ideas. The church's core beliefs, they were not touched. What changed was how the state managed it.
In fact, the state created this new council just to oversee the church. Think monitoring, not agreement.
So this was all about political management. It was never some kind of theological merger.
And if you think this was some permanent truce, well, that idea just falls apart.
The timeline makes it obvious. The 1943 deal was just a temporary pause, not a real change.
And that myth about a pure church in exile, turns out that history is just as tangled. So how does all this complicated history shake out in Russia today? The modern data is really fascinating.
See, while most people identify as Orthodox, actual religious practice is way, way lower.
So let's just break it down one last time. Here's the myth versus the historical reality.
The key takeaway is that the state used the church for its own political aims. Which leaves us with a pretty big question about the nature of power and faith itself.